Good. All right. Awesome. Welcome back to another Worldhoppers video. We have some romance readers here today to give us some fantasy romance recommendations. This will be under the broad umbrella of SFF with romance elements. And all of the proceeds, again, go to charity, all from our merch and from our AdSense. And I will let our guests introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. I am Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany, and I read a lot of books, a lot of sci-fi, fantasy, romance, and other things also.
Hi, I'm Jen from the Book Refuge, and my main focus is romance, but I definitely started with like fantasy and YA fantasy back in the day, and I still enjoy reading fantasy with more heavier romance elements than maybe some people are used to. So very excited to bring some of those options to you guys here. I'm a big fan of Worldhoppers though, like a big fan.
Same. I am a big fan of Worldhoppers too. My name is Bree. I'm from In Love and Words, and I read mainly romance, obviously. I read a lot of contemporary romance, but when I was in my early 20s, I read a lot of like YA fantasy and paranormal, and then I kind of realized that the things that I loved about the fantasy and the paranormal were the romance elements, and so I kind of gravitated more towards contemporary, and now it's all romance all the time for the most part.
Yeah, I'm Heather from Hand Booktubes, and I also started in fantasy and loved all the romance subplots, was like, oh, this is what I'm looking for, but thought that romance would be trash and that was not for me. And then I read my first one. And now I've read like 1,000 in 2 years and don't read anything else, so...
I'm Mara from Books Like Whoa. I've gotten my Worldhoppers swag since I was last on. And I read pretty much all genres, but I do really love romance. And I would say if I could only keep one flavor of romance, it would be speculative. I read a lot of contemporary and historical as well, but speculative is definitely my favorite flavor.
Nice. Love it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We will start off with some recommendations for some young adult SFF romances. And as I told them privately, they're probably going to be talking more than me since I'm just a little amateur dabbler in romance currently. So I will let you start, Bethany.
Okay, so I mean, I think an obvious entry point for a lot of people for both sort of high fantasy romance and urban fantasy romance with YA are Sarah J Maas and Cassandra Clare. I mean, that's really what they are. They are YA fantasy romance of different flavors. I really enjoy them. They are not everybody's cup of tea, but I think a lot of times that can be a good bridge into romance for people. Yeah. And so I think that's like an easy place to start. I do want to recommend though one other book if you are somebody who wants like something a little different. This was a book I really loved. This is Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. And what's interesting about this is the main character is asexual biromantic. And it is a dark fantasy romance with an asexual protagonist. And I really love it. And like, I think what's interesting about this is that it has the romance element without like the sex necessarily, but it's got all the angst and all the emotion of it and things. And anyway, I really loved this a whole lot and I would love to see more people read it. So another option if that sounds appealing.
I remember you talking about that one before and it sounding intriguing.
I liked it a lot.
Well, one of my favorites in the YA area, of course, like I said, besides Sarah J Maas, this is a trilogy of mine that I absolutely adore. And it is the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. I was just, when I heard the synopsis of this book, I knew I had to give it a try. And it's about this princess who runs away on her wedding day and two people come after her. One of them is the prince that she leaves at the altar and the other one is an assassin who's sent to kill her. And the amazing thing about how the story is told is that you don't know who's who, like you don't know which man is which, the way that the author tells the story. So as you, like, it's a mystery that you can uncover. There's enough clues for you to figure it out, but then it gets even more complicated once we discover who's who, because yeah, it's fantastic. It has a really strong female protagonist too. She really grows a lot, and I just really like that. I like when you can start with a character who's maybe a little unlikable at the beginning, and you grow to like them as well.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that one. I've never picked it up, but I definitely heard a lot of people say they really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun. The world's cool too.
Mm-hmm.
I need to read that one. So speaking of strong female main characters, a author that I discovered last year that I absolutely fell in love with is Trisha Levenseller. And she wrote The Shadows Between Us. And that was the first book that I read by her. It is amazing. If you like a ruthless heroine who she basically wants to woo the king so that she can kill him and take over his lands and steal, like have all of his power and everything. But the romance in it is so great because he loves her for her ruthlessness. And he appreciates that about her. And Trisha Levenseller, I ended up binging all of her books that she has out. So I ended up reading The Daughter of the Pirate King duet. And in that one, again, you have another awesome, like badass heroine. And her books are great because they're nice and short and concise. And she like packs a punch in every single page. So there's no fluff in it. So if you want something straightforward to the point, it's really good. Warrior of the Wild is another one that she wrote that's really good. So yeah, strong female heroine, definitely recommend Trisha Levenseller. And the steam level is pretty low, but the romance is really strong.
I think Elle read both of those, the Shadow, that one, and then Warriors of the Wild. And she was telling me that she thinks I would like that first one a lot.
I think you would.
Oh, I think you would.
Mm-hmm.
That's when she was telling me about it, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to read that one. I think it sounds amazing. But I'm always just like, but the smut, there's nothing there.
I know.
Well, I found book 2 because of Sarah J Maas. I was like, more books like Akamath, and there's the whole thing. So that's also kind of what got me into romance. Was I kept picking up everybody's booktube recommendations, and it was just the YA bestseller list. And I was like, okay, but these don't have as much romance. I want more romance. So I was like, ooh, let me go over here. So definitely Sarah J Maas. The other one is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I mean, I don't read a lot of YA now, so I don't have any obscure ones for you. But the Sarah J Maas relationships and the Cruel Prince, I'm looking up fan art for it. I'm like part of Facebook groups. Couples, I love them so much. And the Cruel Prince, I almost DNF'd because I DNF everything. I was like, this is stupid high school drama. I don't like this. Where are the Fae elements? And then it got so dark and twisty and political and assassinated. I was like, oh, I like this. So that's my recommendation.
I love a good assassiny story, personally.
Yeah, I am a tough sell on YA romance in general because I want my romances to have a happily ever after, and I just feel like 16-year-olds are not often capable of that. But so I do have a few that I would describe as YA fantasy with strong romantic elements. So Sabrielle from Garth Nix, I loved that as a young adult. Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. And then one that I recently made Bethany read was Perilous Guard by Elizabeth Marie Pope, which is Fae. This is a classic YA. This was written in the 70s, and it's Fae in Elizabethan England. So it's historical fantasy, and then the romantic element in here, when I tell you that 15-year-old me, this was very formative to my understanding of what it was to be in love. It's not overwhelming, but it's definitely there. And for me, it's what made this an all-time favorite. So it's a little hard to get a hold of, but it's definitely worth it, I think. You liked it, Bethany, I think.
I did. Yeah, I did like it. And fun fact, I found out after I read it that Holly Black says it was one of her inspirations growing up. It came out in the 70s, and so it inspired her writing.
Nice.
So yeah.
Interessante. I've never heard of that, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's
hadn't
really
either before, Mara.
Yeah.
so
I picked it up because of you.
It won a Newbery Award. So like it's like legit, but it's basically out of print. You can find it on audio.
Yeah,
That's
Scribd
where
has
it's
it on audio.
But it's not on ebook, and it's hard to get a hold of the physical copies anymore. So it's a bummer because it's really, really good, but it's worth seeking out. I'm like, this is my new like campaign, is to try to get them to bring it back.
Yeah. Well, I think if you want to talk like formative stuff, I'm doing a reread of this series, which I just started.
Oh my gosh, yes, that too.
Yeah. These are so good. But Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamora Pierce. So she's like, they're so good, but this is like a classic. It's a quartet of books, and she's pretty young in the first book, like 11 or 12, but by the end she's like 20, and there is a strong romance arc that develops as she gets older. There's like magical birth control. It's great. Anyway, I love these a whole lot.
Banging her squire on the side. It's awesome.
It's great. So these are really, really, really good. I'm so happy to be rereading them. They hold up really well.
Tamora Pierce is a national treasure, and like I feel like the kids today don't know. Like, we gotta bring Tamora Pierce.
This is why I'm trying to do it. Like, I'm doing a read along thing with Ashley from Bookish Realm right now, because I'm like, everybody needs to read these, and so people are either like so excited, like, yes, I love those, let's read them, or people are like, oh, I never read those. Like, good, do it now.
Funny. All right, cool. There's that. I don't have any that are anything different. Third J Maas. I'm like, throwing a glass.
I mean, hey, yeah.
Trying to talk into the mic here. Stop it. All right. So moving into some adult romance with some light smut, some low smut levels for people who are a little scared and trying to dip their toes in.
Do I have any of those?
I know.
Did anybody have any of those?
Oh,
I have a lot of them. That's like most of my stuff has like maybe has a couple of scenes later in the book, but like it's not a lot. That's most of my recommendations.
Okay, I got 3 that I think would qualify.
Cool. Go ahead, Bethany.
Okay, so one series that I love, I will say a lot of people I think are giving up on the series after the first book. The first book is okay, but it's not great, but it gets so much better, and the romance gets so much better. And it's these books. So Song of Blood and Stone by Elle Penelope is the first one. And then Whispers of Shadow and Flame is book 2. So book 1 is like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Like, I think it was her debut. But book 2 and book 3 are both really good, and they each follow a different couple. These also have a lot more world building in them, so there is a strong romantic thread, but they lean probably heavier into the fantasy side than the romance side. So if you're more of a fantasy reader and you want to kind of dip your toes into romance, this might be a good series to try. I think they're really interesting. And then one that gets marketed as fantasy, but I would argue is actually a fantasy romance, is Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri.
Really?
Josh from Yogi with a Book loves that one.
She's so good.
Sold the hell out of it.
It's so good. It's like it's the best slow burn friends to lovers romance with like a forced arranged marriage. But external forces are forcing these two people to get married, and they become friends and then end up falling in love like really slowly. It's so good, but the relationship is really central to it, even though there are other things happening in the world, and there's like a lot of good world building. But yeah, this book is really, really good. And like, it looks like, high fantasy, but it's actually like very romantic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot about it.
It's really good. So I should let somebody else give recommendations, because I have a lot.
I didn't bring any light smut ones besides the YA, so I'll say later.
Yeah,
I've got a few I think would be considered lighter smut. So The Wolf and the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky is high. I would say it's as much high fantasy as it is romance or like epic fantasy, and It's a fusion of Inuit and Viking lore as the basis for the world. Our main character uses she, her pronouns, but she's actually dual spirited because she's the shaman for her tribe and she inherited her father's spirit. So she identifies, like, her gender expression is very, like, fluid. And it's just really good. It has some pacing issues, but I think if you're a fantasy reader wanting to try romance, this is like one of the main ones I'd recommend because it really is like an epic fantasy, and it's got Ragnarok at the end. So I mean,
what?
That's
I didn't know that.
pretty rad. Yeah. So
I have it on my shelves. I haven't read it yet, but I bought it.
Yeah. So if you're in the mood for some Ragnarok, there's that one. And then would this be a good time to just give my full Alona Andrews pitch? Like,
sure.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So I think Alona Andrews is a really good author if you are looking to get into more romantic stuff because they have a range. So I would say the ones that are least romantic are the Innkeeper series, which is a sci-fi romance. And it's I made Bethany read it. And it builds... It's like one protagonist. All of their stories really have one protagonist with a relationship building over books. So I think that can be a friendlier point of entry for people who don't want more like episodic romance where there's a different couple in every book. Yeah. So that one is the least romantic. I would say Kate Daniels is middle romantic. The relationship with Kate and Kern is wonderful, but it takes 4 or 5 books for them to really get into it in a 10-book series. So like it's a slow burn. There's a lot of other stuff going on. They're all urban fantasies with kind of like that detective noir kind of feel to them in terms of the plot. Like it's Dresden Files, but I think it's better than the Dresden Files, whatever. I know all the fanboys will come for me for saying that. Oh, sorry. I'm showing you the wrong one. Here we go. This is Kate Daniels. And the premise is that every 2,000 years we vacillate between having technology and magic, and the magic is coming back after about 2,000 years. So all of these old gods are waking up, and it's like across all mythologies from across the world. And it's rad as hell. It's so good. And like, oh, it's so good. It's one of my favorite series. And then if you want full-on romance, if you can't tell from the abs on the cover of this, this is the Hidden Legacy series, which also is super rad. It's basically a version of almost like superheroes kind of a thing, but like there's these different houses who over time have figured out how to like genetically manipulate and like intermarry to create really cool powers. And our main character runs a detective agency, and she's been like trying to keep her and her family's powers under wraps, but like political machinations are happening now. So like everything's coming to the forefront, and it's so good. I love Alona Andrews so much. So anyway, I think Alona Andrews, like there is sex in these books, but it's like usually a sex scene, not like multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like hot and heavy every other page.
Alona Andrews is for sure one of the authors that got me from straight fantasy to romance, and I read like 20 of their books in like 3 months. Like
they're so bingeable.
I would also say for a fantasy light spot, I would put the Winter Night trilogy in there. So the Bear and the Nightingale, the Girl in the Tower, and that had a growing romance through them. I absolutely love that trilogy, and I was okay with the romance not being as heavy, which usually I get bored if it's not, but I just love the atmosphere of that trilogy. Yeah.
I've heard that's a good one to read this time of year when it's nice and cold outside.
I binged them in January of like last year.
Oh, nice.
I binged all 3, and it was great.
Me and Leanna are gonna buddy read the second one this month, and then the third one next month, I think.
It's been a couple years since I read Radiance, but isn't it a bit light on Radiance?
Yeah, I would call it medium.
It's been a very long time.
But I mean, it's not until pretty late in the book.
Right.
There's not
a lot
like
in it,
a couple scenes.
66% to be exact.
got the page mark. I mean, it includes like some pretty intense sex once it happens, or like I think, but I agree it's slow burn,
but it's not a ton of it. So
yeah. It's intense, but not a high volume.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is where people should start with fantasy romance, I think.
You want it because it's such a beautiful slow burn. So you're like, okay, come on.
Yeah. And there's no, I think people misperceive how many books actually have a miscommunication trope in them. I think that's sort of like a cliche of like, oh, all romances are just about them not talking to each other, which is not true. But this is the epitome of that not being true. Because like,
this is like the opposite.
This is the opposite. Like they have great communication, they're buds, and then they have some, hot interspecies loving.
Yeah.
It's great.
I need to read it so bad.
It's so good. It's like political marriage.
Yeah. Jen, would you say, what about Fortuna Sworn? Because I only read the first book and I know you read the rest. So what about the smut level for that one? Because the first book didn't really have much.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard. So it's hard to say with this one because the thinking about sex and the sex drive of the characters is high.
Yeah.
But the actual sex having not really happening.
No.
So, well, I mean, it's true. Like in the third, like they're thinking about it and we're doing like getting to third base a lot of times, but nothing has happened between the characters in the first two books. But I put it in here because it is a slow burn romance between two enemies.
The angst is real high.
But
there's so many parallels between that and Sarah J Maas.
Oh yeah.
So many. So if you like that, then this is a good.
Yeah.
I have
the first book
of my face stuff, but yeah.
The first book, I was like, this is like Akamath plus like Sookie Stackhouse, like better.
Yes.
It's almost urban fantasy, but like it's not.
Yeah, exactly. She's like a little
urban
waitress at a little diner in a podunk town. I was like,
I mean, it's freaking covered, guys.
Is she too dumb to live?
Yeah.
They are magnificent.
Is it she's too stupid to live?
She is not too stupid.
Okay, so
that's why she's better. She just has similarities.
She's a little bit dumb. She's
a little dumb
with the Fae without being like, what might the consequences be?
Yeah.
I mean, I love Sookie, but she is, God love her, dumb as a stump in a lot of his books.
I feel like Fortuna's just been betrayed by the Fae so often that she jumps into a few decisions because she's like, I hate you all.
Then betrayed by them, and then like ask no questions with the very first deal that was brought to her. She's like, okay, this should be fine.
This will work out.
I'm sorry, I love this. Other people can hate it, but I absolutely love it. I haven't read the third book yet.
I haven't either. I need to read the third one still. I haven't read it.
I was
I
waiting
have to read on in that series.
My thing was she was human. Like she's a paranormal. She knows about the paranormal world. She should know not to make deals with the Fae.
She doesn't.
So speaking of KJ Sutton, her real name is Kelsey Sutton, and she wrote a couple of YA books that I am obsessed with. So one of them is Some Quiet Place, and it's so interesting because the heroine doesn't have any emotions, but she sees emotions personified. It's a pretty short book. There's 2 books in this world, but it's basically like a standalone. It's really, really, really interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. And there's a romance in that too. It's like it's not heavy on the romance, but the romance is in it too, and it's good.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it.
Okay. So yeah, I've got a couple more later ones.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
do. I have 2 more.
Yeah. Go
Okay. So one is a series that like there is occasionally a sex scene, but like most of it is not that, and that's like the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger.
Oh, yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah, they're really, really fun. These are Victorian steampunk paranormal romance with like werewolves and vampires, and there's like mystery plots to them, and a very wonderfully snarky main character who I love. And then there's spin-off series set in the same world. So these are really fun. They do have romances in them, and they do occasionally have a sex scene, but like a lot of it is the mystery and the characters in the world and like other things that are going on. So like that I think is a good entry point. In fact, I would say this is probably the first romance series I read before I was comfortable reading romance or calling myself a romance reader at all. Like I read these and they were like, I was like, whoa, those scenes are a little much for me, like at the time.
Oh,
But,
you
like,
sweet summer child.
I know, like many years ago. But like I enjoyed the characters and the world and the mystery so much that I was like, okay, we're gonna keep reading this anyway. So like that could be like a good entry point. And then the one that I have just been pushing on everybody all the time because it's so good, and I have yet to hear anybody say they didn't like it when they finally read it, is Rain and Ruin by J.D.
I bought
Evans.
It's on my
Yay!
TBR. It's on my
Yes.
TBR.
Yes, I'm so happy. I'm like pushing this on every. It's so good. And this is great because it's equal parts fantasy and romance. So it's a great entry point for fantasy readers. It's a great entry point for romance readers if you want to get into the other genre. This also has like pretty good military elements to it. The author was in the military for 10 years, and it shows in the way she writes like battle scenes and tactics and stuff. But it's got this great slow burn romance, and when you do eventually get a couple of sex scenes near the end, like they're good intense sex scenes, but like it takes a while to get there. So, and I love their relationship, so this was a really good one. And it's on Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
It's on Kindle Unlimited, yeah.
I got it
And
on
there's a whole
Kindle.
series. I haven't read the other ones yet, but she's got I think like 3 out so far.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what you said about it. I just remembered that when you talked about it, I was like, ooh, I want to read that. And so I was like, I'll buy it.
I'll definitely do it if it's Kindle Unlimited. I was just going to mention The House in the Cerulean Sea is a romance, and it is no smut, right? No smut at all.
No,
but it is tender and precious. And that epilogue just like
oh my
melted
gosh,
my
I
little
love it
heart.
so much.
So good. This is like Grump and Sunshine kind of a trope, maybe, or like Fuddy Duddy and like free spirited guy.
Yeah.
It's two men, which I always
And they're, like,
appreciate some
middle-aged.
own boys. Yeah, and they're middle aged, and they have a found family of adorable little monsters they're taking care of. It's so sweet.
I love it so much. It's so cute.
The most precious romance. Like I talked about this earlier. As like something I like that's like a cute thing, like a cute trope that I like a sweet trope, is just like characters noticing random little things. And when he notices the socks and he's like, he just thinks like all the cute things about the socks, and we're just like, oh, he likes his socks.
He likes socks. Yeah. And then,
Chauncey.
Chauncey is my whole heart.
Chauncey's everybody's favorite, I think, all the time.
So cute.
It's so cute.
He just wants to be a bellhop, and he's going to be such a good one.
Books from that book are really amazing too. Like there are so many very quotable.
Oh yeah.
It's so whimsical, which I think is hard to pull off without it feeling kind of twee. And then on a much less cute note, Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. It's a one couple that's going to be over multiple books kind of a thing. So it's very slow burn, but she's a monster hunter and he's also a magical person. It's based on Navajo magic. So yeah, this is a cool post-apocalyptic urban fantasy, I guess is how I describe this.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good description.
You
have some more? Okay,
well, if we want to include anything that's more sci-fi-y, I do have one recent read that I could include in here. It's really good. It's my favorite book I've read so far this year.
I know it's movie. Yeah.
Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell.
I was thinking of that one.
Good. It's so good. And this one is definitely it's politically driven sci-fi with a queer love story, a political arranged marriage. It's a slow burn, very low smut. Like there's kissing on page, and like they do sleep together, but like you don't see it on page, which like I'm kind of happy about since the author is not a man.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved this a lot. Like there's just their relationship dynamic is so good, and it's like opposites attract. One of them is very like outgoing people person, like likes to have fun, and the other one is more like quiet, introverted, smart guy. And the quieter guy is also dealing with having been in a abusive relationship previously, so it's kind of dealing with that, and that drives some of the miscommunication that happens. That's the thing, like I don't always love miscommunication, but in this case it made sense for the characters given their history. Anyway, I loved it a whole lot. It was really good.
I've DNF'd many a book because of miscommunication. And yeah, I said it in my review. It still frustrated me at times, like, oh my God, just talk. But at the same time, I was like, it completely makes sense why they aren't talking. Like, it 1000% is logical to me, like checks out in my brain of why they're. And that's another like really sweet romance. I feel like it's just so
sweet
real and sweet.
I
like,
just love them so much and want them together.
So
like I ship them so much.
Yeah. They're so precious together.
Yeah.
I really love them.
I did have a bunch of favorites in this category.
Yeah.
No. Bree, did you have any more?
That weird in between. I mean, I guess my only thing would be like, if you like TJ Klune's writing, Wolf Song, you could definitely go with the what is it called? What's the series called?
Winter
Green Creek Song is sad. Yeah,
it is. Wolf Song.
Yeah.
Hearing
about
that one has the smut levels a little bit higher, but
see, I didn't feel like it was.
Well, we can move
I feel like
of course you didn't.
I mean, it's
Are we calling this mild?
there, but there's not much there.
Oh, mild. Oh, well, see, I didn't know we were doing like mild. That's like in between. Shoot, I don't know.
Well, we can just go to heavy.
We've had a lot of things.
The only mild I have I'd say is the other Grace Draven one, the Fallen Empire series. It's between light and mild. I know you didn't, but I did. I really like the world in this one, and it's again another one that I would call probably as much fantasy as romance, but it's a little. I think it's a little spicier. So.
Yeah. I don't know if I have one for this. The only one I can really, I mean, Sarah J Maas, like obviously I read, but and I mean, House of Earth and Blood, I would say is light.
Yes,
like,
but I bet the next book won't.
Oh
be.
yeah, then I'm sure she's gonna.
Like, it's building. It's building to it. Like
there better be.
Give me Hot Angel. I need it. Please.
There's a lot of like sex talk in that book.
Yeah.
But like not a lot of
fooling around and then like we get interrupted.
Yeah.
There was never full consummation of love.
Yeah. Stupid. But the one I don't know, I feel would this be mild or heavy? I feel like it'd be mild. The Promise of Fire, the King.
Hey, I wasn't sure where to put it. I think it's I think it's mid smut because it takes a long time.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Are heavier. But
like once they do, it's like, oh, okay.
There's a slow burn because this is enemies to lovers, but I love the cover that you have. So
I wanted the
I like that.
one. I haven't read the third one yet, but yeah, I really like this because it's so heavy to me. I mean, I'm not like a master of this genre, but it had that fantasy element that I love, like the Greek mythology and the, badass warriors.
The gods puppeting people.
Yeah, the gods are involved in doing stuff. And we have like a lost heir thing happening, which I also love. And the alpha male and all the things. And I liked it because I felt like it was a really good mix. It was pretty, once it got going, the romance took a while to become like smutty at all, but it was still a romance was happening, on the page.
I love it.
But there was so much like action happening too. And
I need to read those. I haven't read her yet, and somebody was just telling me I needed to.
He's so alpha, but he's so obsessed with her.
Yeah, he is. So
See, I'm okay with that. Like as long as
I did have a little bit of an issue in. Hey, stop! I'm sorry, my cat almost knocked over.
My cats are going crazy. If you see me going off camera, that's why.
It's fine. But towards the end of the second one and the beginning of the end of the first one and the beginning of the second one, I didn't love some of the manhandling that was happening. It was like, okay, wait, let's not do that. But that also might just be a personal thing for me.
It's been a while.
I think it might be a personal thing.
Yeah. Not in the bedroom, I'm fine with. But when he was like mad and expressing his anger through being physical, and I was like, yeah. But it wasn't bad, and it was just for like a scene. I was like, okay,
I love
He's a very passionate man.
In that first book. I remember that, even though it's I was like, oh.
What? You cut out what did you like in the
when they're chained together? And
I like that.
Oh,
yeah. Kept me going. I was like, oh, all right.
Love forced togetherness.
Yes.
Yeah, forced proximity. Put it in my eyeballs.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll save it for when we end because Mara just got really excited to tell you about something, but it's not fantasy, so I'll wait.
I think I would call the Agents of Hell paranormal series from Jacqueline Carey to be mid-smut. Like the sex scenes that happen are pretty intense and there's more than one or two of them. I would recommend this if you like Suki Stackhouse kind of a thing, but you want it to be like better written. I don't get me wrong, I love Suki Stackhouse. Like I binge those and that's what like re-excited me about paranormals, but like I think this is probably a better version and there's only 3 of them, so it's a little easier to like commit to. So
Better version.
yeah. So anyway,
them recently.
I know, Deshauna, I've been loving your videos when you were rereading them.
Oh, me too. I laughed my ass off.
Tortured myself. No. It was fun. But Suki's the worst.
she's special.
She is. All right. Anybody else got any more mild stuff, or should we just get right into the good stuff?
Get into the good stuff.
Let's do good stuff.
I think I have all of like one thing for the. This is not my wheelhouse so much.
I think on the light smut, I think Patricia's D. Reed, the one that does the Alpha and Omega, the
Oh, Patricia Briggs.
Patricia Briggs.
thank you. Patricia C. Reed is like middle grade, I think. Ignore that.
don't read Patricia Briggs if you're expecting a middle grade.
Yeah, Patricia Briggs. I remember reading that right at the beginning of stumbling into romance, and I don't remember there being a lot of that. And it takes a few books, I think, for her, like her alpha to work themselves out.
Yeah, and I would give a definite content warning on that series because there's a really intense backstory for sexual assault, but it's well handled. It's just like intense.
Yeah, still be aware.
It's been a
Yeah.
long.
Actually, before we leave mild smut, I forgot to mention Hearthstone, which is basically Pride and Prejudice, but with dragons.
What?
Yeah, every time you talk about that, I'm like, I need to read that.
This book is so good. The Lizzie character is an herb healer, and the Darcy character is a dragon warrior, and it is fantastic. So
That sounds amazing.
yeah, Hearthstone by L.
mean-
Catherine White. And
I
there's
mean, it
no,
literally is that. It's like It's literally Pride and Prejudice.
it's literally the
with
same
dragons.
plot line, but with dragons.
Yeah.
And so there's actually no smut in this one at all.
Okay.
Just a lot of intense looks, which only really works for me in Pride and Prejudice. So
That's true.
that hand grip.
I was
though,
gonna
yeah.
say, is there a hand flex in
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I don't know if it's literal, but like in my head, yes, there was.
We talked about that earlier too, because in The Beautiful, Elle and I read that right at the same time, and she hated all the like longing looks they were giving.
Oh,
to
I
each other, like,
love that.
talking about it. And she was like, there was a part where he like flexed his hand, and she was like, "What does this mean? Is he mad at me?" And I was like, "See, that made me think of Pride and Prejudice." So I was like,
Yes.
I love
"Oh my
it.
god!"
See,
There's
I
a
read
whole-
that in a book recently, and I circled it, underlined it, and sent it to my friend. And I was like, "Look, the hand flex!" And this longer reached for her and squeezed his hand and said, and we were both like, "Ah!"
So good.
There's a whole meme going around on TikTok right now theorizing that like the male gaze, well, we know what that looks like in movies, but like the female gaze is around eyes and hands. So there's been a lot of like analyses of Darcy's hand squeeze I've seen on TikTok recently, and I'm like,
That's so
good God,
interesting.
yes.
The forearms.
Oh yeah,
That's the female gaze is the, yeah. So
Love it. Love it.
okay,
Did you
sorry,
have any
heavy
for the
smut
heavy
time.
smut, Bethany?
Yeah, okay. So my one recommendation, which I'm sure other people probably have as well, is going to be the Side Changeling series by Delaney Singh.
I need to read that one too. I need to read all these.
I'm about to start
Yeah.
a podcast about this series. I effing love
So
this
excited
series
for it.
so much.
They're so good. Well, I started reading them partly because of Mara and like some other people that I heard talking about them. But yeah, these are, I guess, technically more sci-fi, but people talk about them as paranormal because they're shifters, but there's like scientific reasons for it.
Yeah.
But what I really like about them is the overarching plot thread is really interesting with like politics and mystery and stuff. And so that like keeps me going through the books, because I'm like, okay, I don't really like alpha male characters. I can deal with them if the female character is also more alpha, and I can also put up with them better in a paranormal romance than in any other kind of romance. So occasionally there are books in this series where I'm like, I kind of hate the romance, but I love the views of all the other previous couples, and I love the overarching plot thread, so I'll still give it 3 stars and keep reading them. So like, it's that kind of series.
It's more earlier in the series. Once they get later, that goes away a lot. But that's very fair. Some of the earlier
good.
books.
Like Kiss of Snow is really good. This one was a long time coming. Like the couple, it was a really good one. So.
But it's no Heart of a City.
But like she's very powerful and pushes back on him. So I don't mind when she's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna tell me what to do. Well, take that." Like I don't mind that. That's fine.
You should definitely try this series then, Bethany.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's can't say it. Can't say it. She's fantastic. Yeah.
I continue to read that series too. Every time you guys both talk about it, I'm always like, oh yeah,
they're great. But they are like very steamy from early on.
Well, I was going to say, I would put this between mild and heavy. I actually don't think this is all that, like compared to some of the things we're going to talk about. Like, I don't actually think this is that intense. But
I don't know. I mean, it depends on the book though. Like some of the couples, it starts early and goes strong through the whole thing. Some of the book, it's like it depends on the couple.
Yeah.
I think you've not fully dipped your toes into the. Like we've sheltered you, Bethany, from full smut, but like I've lured you in with a little bit of Ruby Dixon, and soon you'll be able to spread your wings and really fully embrace true smut. Because I don't know that you've really encountered it yet.
I think I just like I need like good plot, you know? Like
you can have that. It just.
But sometimes that's not, because I have read things that are like almost entirely smutty and have like crappy plot. I'm like, I don't care. Like, this is fine. Like,
Jen, say it. Banging is the plot.
I have this shirt over there. Sometimes banging is the plot. Sometimes it's the plot. And it's okay. It is okay if it is not a plot you want to back. Like, I agree too. That if it's a badly done
banging plot, then
erotic romance can be some of the most beautiful romance I've ever read. But it's then the plot though. Like then it isn't just nonsensical love happening. I'm trying to use this is a charity channel. I'm trying to be good, girl. But like when it's done badly, yeah, then it is just that. But erotic romance is some of my favorite books because you're doing stuff with it. Which is true, because I think the deepest connections we can have are when we share our bodies with someone. And if that's done in a bad way or poorly, that's what leads to trauma for people, is because it's the most intimate you can be with someone. If someone F's that up, then you have a traumatized person. So anyway, sorry.
No, you're totally right.
Because it can be healing. And I like seeing sex as healing for people and not to damage. Okay.
It's done well.
Which way do I go? Do I save some of these for other people to say, or do I say my favorite?
You can double up if you want to second it. You know, that's fine.
I have to do it because it's me first. Come on, who read it first of people here? It was. I'll hold it up. It's beautiful. All other people praise on it too, but I absolutely adore this book. This is a pretty heavy smut. It's still not the heaviest of smut I have to share, but I think because the connection is so important. But this is a world where reading this book earlier this year pointed out to me what I love about romantic fantasy. Because previously I thought I just like to find fantasies that had a good romance in them. But this book, it does not work without the romance, and it does not work without the fantasy. And that is why this is a true fantasy romance. So much so that Berkeley actually has it labeled as a fantasy romance, where other things would be called fantasy with romance in it. And so this is a enemies to lovers, marriage deal type of situation. There are a lot of trigger warnings for this, but it also has a female character who starts as the weakest of us, and using her mind and using her political sense, she is able to become a powerful warrior queen. And I just, and it has a male character who, if the author didn't build him up in the beginning, you would hate him so much.
Oh my gosh.
He does a great job of giving you time to understand his motivations of Like, I haven't even set this up. I'm just talking about how great it is because I don't have forever to talk about it. But this book is amazing, and I love what the author's doing with this series. And I think a lot of people on this chat know what I'm talking about. So,
I mean, there's a bloody handy in that one. Like, it's full on. Like,
it is. But it means something.
It means something.
It's meaning something. It's like what's happening in that situation isn't as carnal and disgusting as it sounds, or as hot as it sounds to some of us who are twisted. Like, it has a purpose, and it's literally like creating a covenant with blood.
Yeah.
Is that the one? I think, Bree, I think I commented when you talked about it. Did you talk about it? And I was like, oh my God, I looked it up and like all the trigger ones.
Yeah, it has a lot.
Yeah.
It's such a good book.
It's on my
read it.
TBR shelf, so I do have a copy.
Yeah.
Beware, Bethany.
Bethany's just gonna dive in.
But I also think, like, with all the warnings people have talked about it, I don't think it is as crazy as we build it up to be. It's so well written that you don't, like, you will see the trauma of this character, but she is such a strong woman who will not be held back by those things, that it doesn't like hurt as much as in some other books where we're wallowing. Some characters would wallow in the pain, and she's like, no.
She was basically tortured. She's also a disabled character too. But she was also tortured. So that's why there's so many trigger warnings, is because there's torture and ableism and all sorts of stuff in it. But it's not the main focus. Like, it's not super highlighted, I guess.
Yeah.
Say that it's darker than regular adult fantasy though. Like, those are a scene, but not in an adult fantasy. It's not going to go darker than that at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be the darkest thing you've ever read if you read adult fantasy all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I read a lot of adult fantasy.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would actually say that book you were showing is my least favorite of the three. I actually like the prequel novella and the sequel better. But if people don't know, Mila Vane originally was writing under Mel Jean Brooke, and this series I think it's even better. I just sorry, I got my Siri up for some reason. This is steampunk fantasy romance, and it's set in a world where the Mongol Empire actually took over the world, but then there was a zombie outbreak. And we're in London. Our main character in this first one is a lady detective, and there is a duke, hence the Iron Duke. But it's very steamy, but like, if you've read Mila Vane stuff, you know what the quality of writing is like in these. It is so well written. The characters are so interesting, and it's such a cool world. Like, I love these, but they're very smutty. But I think if you value prose quality and world building, I think she's definitely a good author to give a chance.
I'm getting so many things to add to my.
I'll let some other people go.
You guys go.
My category. So
You got one?
So as far as like paranormal romance, I talk about this series on my channel all the time. I love the Nightwalkers series by Jacqueline Frank. This one has another really good overarching plot, but it's very, very romance heavy, and it's very, very steamy. And it's basically the Nightwalkers are a combination of like demons and necromancers and just shifters, and they're the shadow dwellers, and it's just a really interesting world, but the relationships in it are the main focus. And it's just a really good like balance of paranormal and world building, but then also like really steamy, strong romances. And it's a fated mates type of situation too. I love it.
What's the first one?
Jacob is the first one.
Oh, that series. Okay. I thought it was that series, but I was like,
those are the ones that I was like, why do they all have names of?
Like they're all biblical names.
Yeah, but I thought they were all like other paranormal guy names, because it was like Jacob and like whatever, and then Elijah, and I was like from the originals. You're like, no, they're biblical names.
Only $3.99 on Amazon right now, so
nice.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Okay, I have several on this, but I'll just do one for now. I really like Kristen Ashley as an author. She has a couple different fantasy ones. She writes alpha males. If you don't like alpha males, she's not to change your mind. Like, they're alpha. They're often jerk faces. You're just kind of want to smack them.
Yeah,
they're
too much for me.
Apologize super well. So I mean, they're not mind if this is not already your thing. But she wrote Wildest Dreams, which is Fantasyland #1, and the covers are terrible, so don't judge me based on that. But it's a parallel universe fantasy romance, so we take someone from modern America. The first book, she's going on purpose. She kind of wants to see her dead parents' doppelgangers. Like, that would make it better, because there's a person in each parallel universe that's the same as you. So to switch places, you literally switch places. So she, unbeknownst to her, switches places with the princess, who is, you know, on her wedding day, marrying somebody who hates her. And then she's like, she doesn't know how, like, what that girl's personality is or anything. So she's just being her. And he's like, yeah, I hate you so much. And then he just, like, puts her in a cabin in the woods in the snow. And it's, like, very French history-ish was, like, the feel I got. But the alphas in the series, they're all leaders of their country. And I took it this way. Not everybody's going to take it this way. But the alphas in this series in particular do things that are not okay. I take it as that is the society that they're in. And it's kind of to prove a point of, hey, we don't like this. This is not what we want to do. Like in the first one, I'll just tell you that he talks to one of his friends and is like, remember how your wife was like taking birth control and like you could divorce her and stuff because that's not something that women get to choose. I found out that she's taking birth control and I'm just going to replace it and she won't know. And as the modern day woman, she's like, are you freaking kidding me? And
Yeah.
no, are you freaking kidding me? You know? So it's like things like that where like you're like, no, I don't like that. But you can see why they have a completely different opinion.
The book is addressing that.
The book is like a Khal Drogo and Khaleesi from our world retelling with the happily ever after. It gets very dark. There's major triggers for domestic abuse in that book. But if you Thrones and you're just like, I want a Khal Drogo Khaleesi smut fest where they live happily ever after. It's a really good one.
I would say Kristen Ashley does. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jen.
No, I was just like, she rarely steers me wrong, so I'm like, okay, am I right?
Yeah, I would just say I would definitely warn people that Kristen Ashley has a very idiosyncratic writing style, and it's not for everyone. She's one I always recommend, like, get a few sample chapters to see if you like it, because she came from the world of sort of like self-pub fan fiction, and it's very crackalicious. Like, you can't, if you like it, you'll just like binge it, but it's not, she hasn't been edited to read like a traditionally published author. And I think that is a barrier to entry for a lot of people. So I think she's a good, like, get a sample chapter, see if you can deal with the writing. If you can't, if you don't like that, you shouldn't keep going, because like that's just how the books are.
Start to like it.
Much. She tells you a lot about their outfits and about
in detail.
A lot of conversations between everybody. So like Charles hates it. So you can my taste, but
that sounds accurate. He also hates Sarah J Maas, and Sarah J Maas does stuff like that too. So.
Yeah.
What does he like?
Great question.
We talked about it earlier, so you'll see in that video. He was in
He loves Sabathir's writing.
Yeah.
That's,
Ember in the Ashes. We just buddy read a YA fantasy together, and he was like, the YA fantasy I want is Sabathir's Ember in the Ashes. Anything like less than that sucks. I'm like, wow, okay.
But he reads so much for him not to like it.
I know.
Yeah.
He reads so fast.
Bree, did you have one?
Do you have another one, Bethany, or are you
No, I'm
just
done.
okay?
I'm done. I'm listening.
Or has Bree gone?
I went, yeah.
Oh, you
I
did.
did the Night Walkers.
I'm gonna do my second round.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Yeah, we're on the.
I think we're on Mara.
Yeah.
Oh, I jumped in with Mel Jean Brooke, but I will share the good news of Ruby Dixon with everyone. So Ruby Dixon does have a fantasy series, which starts with The King's Spinster Bride and then continues in Bound to the Battle God and Sworn to the Shadow God, which is epic, high fantasy with like the gods walking among the mortal plane, and the gods come to Earth because like basically the head god gets sick of them every once in a while and makes them like come walk among mortals and like fight it out, and whoever wins gets to come back. So it's like they're slow burn, and it's a fun like barbarian type series. If you like the Mila Vane series, this is probably a good one for you. But I love her sci-fi romances. The Rizdaverse I love, and then I love Ice Planet Barbarians so much. They are so crackalicious and wonderful, but actually have, I think, like genuine thematic depth to them, which I appreciate. And I did like a whole hour-long vlog of this, including like my theories about how this is like a feminist text. But basically it's a lot about like consent and agency for women in sexual relationships, and how you navigate, like, I think as women we often have our sexual agency taken away from us to various degrees and some point in our lives. And I think that these are books about like women in that situation then finding ways to still say like, I'm going to make the choices that I can make, and I'm going to feel good about them even in these like really jacked up situations. So they're very smutty, and they're filled with cinnamon roll heroes who are dumb as rocks, but all they want to do is find their fated mate. Like, I heard someone say that this is a world where all of the men have bridal magazines and are like planning their wedding. Like, all they want is to have a mate. This is all they want in life. So anyway, they're so fun and crazy and wonderful.
I love it. So fun.
Okay, so I'm really excited to share this duet. I actually, right before this meeting, like 10 minutes before, I finished the second one in this duology. And so this is A King So Cold. Let me just show you how gorgeous this is.
That was really
cool. And let me just read the back tagline here. It says, "Once upon a time, there lived a princess so cruel that even her husband tried to destroy her."
Dang.
So this is about the princess of the Winter Court. And this book starts with her exiled husband trying to marry someone else because he doesn't remember that she exiled him from the Winter Court for trying to kill her. So that is the first beginning of this, is that she is in her castle and a messenger shows up and says, the prince is trying to marry someone else. And so she flies in on her dragon and says, "Nah, sir, you ain't marrying anybody else. Now I'm going to throw you in the dungeon." And so then she goes about torturing him the way she should have in the beginning. So
I'm here for the dragon riding.
Yeah. And the second one is called The Stray Prince, which was so good. So it was fantastic. Loved it.
Love that.
That's on Kindle Unlimited. Both of them are. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I looked it up. It's on Kindle Unlimited.
so good.
Like,
Yeah.
She's so, like, I would say, Brie, because you love like the book you love, Trisha Levenseller. You reminds me of her like a lot. Sorry, I forgot what it's called. But, it reminds me of that, but like darker, a lot darker. So
Nice.
yeah.
So I think for something a little different, the Four Horsemen series by Laura Thalassa is really interesting.
Ooh, yeah.
So the first one is Pestilence, and it's basically the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse, but it's their romances.
They are dark.
They are dark. They're very dark. Fair warning. Very, very dark. I mean, they are literally killing off the human race. So definitely enemies to lovers, all of them. But I really like them. They were just different.
Yeah. They're really well done, I think.
I think
there's
so
a lot
too.
of interesting character work in that little quartet.
Mm-hmm.
Are they shorter? Or are
I
they
don't
longer?
They're like regular size books.
Oh, okay.
They're not super long, though. I would call them like 250, maybe
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
300.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're used to
Henry?
fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're normally reading fantasy, they'll just go by in a breeze.
Okay. I have another one. I love so much. I know Jen knows what I'm going to talk about probably. I love Chase Lee Bidden. and the whole Blood Alliance series by Lexi C. Foster.
We're off for our copy of it. Yeah.
Also, this is a dystopian dark society. I love this setup because it's like there's no consent. There's lots of darkness, there's lots of brutalness, but it's like that is the way the paranormals operate, because you have a society that is ruled by vampires and werewolves, and they erased human history. Humans only are still alive because we are food, and that is it. And so not only do the humans not remember history as we know it, but also they are surrounded by brutality, by supernaturals who are so much faster and stronger than them. Everything is set up in a society, in a system where like you're sent to the blood farms, you're sent to create more humans, you're sent, so there's no choices, there's no options. The first one is she is a blood virgin, so her blood is just especially tasty. Because of that, she's untouched, but her mentors and stuff have to go through a lot of things in front of them to show them what they're doing. And then this vampire, and he's like, she's so meek, she's perfectly trained, perfectly brainwashed, she's gonna be the perfect weapon to take down this society. So he like starts to meek her up. He's like, get it back on.
Deprogram her. He's trying to deprogram her.
Yeah, okay.
Like she ends up being his fated mate. But even, first of all, he's still a vampire. He still is never going to act like a human or care like a human. And also, they're still in the society where, like, if they figure out he's not playing by the rules, they're both going to die. It's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's like, you still really like the heroes, even though they are clearly not good people.
Yeah.
They're like doing the best they can within the circumstances and within their species. And I just love it. It's so much smart, so much world building. It's so good.
This was one of my 6-star reads in January. I love it so much because,
very good.
How do you give someone back consent? Like, it is a fantastic discussion that happens because it doesn't exist anymore. It's been 170 years or something since people have had consent. So how do you give that back to someone? It's fascinating. Oh, it's so good.
Was that a newer release, or is it a series that's like done already?
It's coming out now. It's coming out.
One
The
more
first 4 are
out this year. Is that the final one? I'm not 100% sure on if she's
okay. Just between you, that character can't be the last one. Like there's one more character who has to have a book.
King is releasing in June or August. Kingly Bevin.
I think it's in May or June. But I mean, that can't be the last one.
I mean,
but anyway, sorry, side discussion for another time. Like, there's another character that has to have a book. I think you know who I mean.
Do I? Is that the guy that likes werewolves? The vampire?
No, the one who's in prison.
Oh, but he already had
no.
The one that's been missing the whole time.
Yes.
That's how they know he's alive, because his mate is still alive.
I know, but they have to get back together. Okay, stop. We can't talk about this here. Nobody knows what's going on. We'll talk later.
Speculation for another time.
Anyway, I have feelings.
I can't prove this. I've been doing the copyright research, and Katie Wilde has not registered copyright, so I can't know this for a fact. I suspect that Katie Wilde is another pen name for Mel Jean Brooks / Mila Vane, because the writing is so similar, and just like from social media sleuthing. So I can't, that's speculation on my part, but I think that they may be the same person. But this series, which is called the Deadlands series, I also really like Katie Wilde's contemporaries. Side note, they're good. But her fantasy ones, like all of these, they're just like campy. They're very Ruby Dixon-esque. Like they have the like light touch, but like with nice writing and some heavier themes. And this particular one, which is called the Midwinter Mail Order Bride, which was a version of like a Christmas mail order bride story, starts like the hero is a barbarian who has just taken over this land, and he comes into this into his palace, and he finds out that his advisor has like sent off for a bride for him, and he finds her in the middle of a room with a sword out trying to kill everyone. He's like, this is the woman for me. So it just goes from there. They go on a road trip, and it's really fun. It is very steamy, but it's also, I think, got a nice emotional heft underneath it.
I love that one.
So,
Plus,
yeah.
it's shorter. It's like 185 pages. So if you
Yeah.
want a not super long read, that really does have a lot of fantasy elements in it. A lot of good building, a lot of smut, and like a shorter read.
Yeah, this is, I think, 300 pages, but they're short. Their novellas are short novels in the series. So, yeah.
Cool. I'm thinking of the most recent smutty thing I read, and it probably for you guys wouldn't even be all that smutty. It's that Jennifer L. Armentrout, the Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and the other one.
This one?
I'm reading it right now.
Yeah, we have this for book club this month.
The first one,
Yeah, I've started it.
real slow burn, but
Ooh, I love
and
a
then the
slow
second
burn.
one annoyed the ever loving crap out of
Oh,
me.
really?
But I still liked it because of other stuff going on. But the main character,
there's like a good make out scene pretty early on in this.
yeah, there is that. Yeah.
It's
But
fun.
in the second book, it gets a little smutty. And has anyone else read it? The second book in here? No. There's a scene that happens that made me real excited for things to come. Potential throuple situation, maybe, perhaps. I don't know. We're like hinting at it. And it was hot. And I was here for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, ooh, what are we going to get in the next one?
Well, I think like Jennifer L. Armentrout's interesting because I've also read a couple of her YA speculative books, and they're kind of new adulty. Like they're pretty steamy for YA, and they're also very like they're like popcorn books. You know, like they're like really dramatic and entertaining and fun and quick to read. I feel like, and I haven't read a ton of her stuff, but like what I have read, it has all been.
I haven't read anything else, but that's how I felt about these two books. Where I was like, this is just a good time, and it was heavier fantasy. All the paranormal stuff, and as it goes on, you learn more and more. I'm sorry, I have cat hair like on my face. I can like feel it like all over my face.
That's the worst.
Yeah, but it felt like it's adult, but I was like, it doesn't feel like super adult fantasyness. Like the tone of it still felt a little like I would say like a new adult is kind of what it felt like, but the smut happening later on
was all adult.
That's all.
So like the ACOTAR comparison is good, probably. I mean, because that's what ACOTAR is kind of basically.
It's kind of like that. I think it's heavier with the fantasy elements for sure, and like more actual like plot happening. But the fantasy elements also are kind of all over the place a little bit. And I was like, what is? But I didn't really care because, like I said, it was that popcorny. Like it was just fun, and. I would say I feel like the romance, definitely the second book, the smut is, I think more. It's been a while since I read the ACOTAR trilogy, though. Honestly, I'll be honest.
There's not as much smut in ACOTAR.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Like it gets.
I'm literally I'm marking the scene because I'm marking my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
And in the third book, there's only like 3.
Yeah.
And
I guess there's way
felt
more.
like a lot to me.
Yeah.
But also maybe that was when I was reading them. I was like, this is a lot.
One chapter 50. It's only chapter 55. It's the only one, but it feels like there's so much more because there's so much tension between them.
Yeah.
First one, there's one scene. In the second one, there's one scene, and then the third one, there's 3. So it just feels like it because they're so upset with each other.
Build
but
up.
not actually.
Thinking about it all the time and like.
Yeah. Well, and they're in each other's heads, like having sexy conversations, so it feels like a lot. But legit, I'm rereading it. I'm like, wow, there's only 2 sexy, but like it's fine because I love the book, but it's not. But so I actually have this is like I don't know what to categorize it as because it's definitely fantasy, but it doesn't feel like paranormal, as in like it's not really in the modern world because it's a different setup. But I have the A Touch of Darkness and A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett Sinclair. These are Hades and Persephone retellings. And it's a world where the gods of Olympus like are out and like people know who they are. So Hades is one of the top 3 gods, right? Because he's part of the trio of that. And then Persephone, she's a goddess who's been kind of kept hidden by her mother, Demeter, classic. So this is a like direct retelling in the fact that they are Hades and Persephone and everyone goes by their names and everything. And she is a reporter and she ends up going to one of Hades' clubs and accidentally entering into a deal with him. He tricks her into a deal, just like in the myth. And so now she must come to his to the underworld and try to grow something for him. And if she can't grow something for him within a certain amount of time, then she will belong to him. But there's kind of like a fated mate element in it because there's like a prophecy about them. And this series is ongoing. The first 2 are out. The 3rd one will be out soon. And then she's actually announced that there will be another one too. So I don't know. I really love her writing. The audiobooks were really great for these. And yeah, I know a lot of people love Hades and Persephone retellings. And this was my first book I read of the year. And I just devoured both of these. I really
I really like mythological fantasy and retellings of myths and stuff in Greek mythology.
Those covers are pretty too.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody else? I just have one more series, but if anyone else has any.
I have the last one I was going to mention is Immortals After Dark by Kresley Cole. I think that this is a little uneven as a series. What?
So your book's so pretty.
Yeah, I got this at the used bookstore.
Oh,
sorry. Isn't it pretty? Yeah.
It is kind of
it's urban fantasy, I guess, because it's high fantasy elements in our world. Like there are shifters, there are vampires, but there's also like Valkyrie and demons and like pick your fantasy critter and like there's a sexy version of them somewhere in here. And I think when she started the series, she didn't have a vision for the overarching plot, but like it kind of built and it comes to be pretty interesting because it's like it's not Ragnarok, but think that kind of an idea of like every 500 years, there's like a big reckoning with all of the fantasy creatures. Yeah. And they're all finding their fated mates and banging a lot. And I think
females.
Very strong female. I mean, like most of not maybe most, but a lot of our protagonists are Valkyrie. So like they have no F's to give.
That's for sure.
Yeah, like they give their heroes what for. Like they are not getting walked all over. And I would say that there's a lot of trigger warnings in this series. I think she mostly handles that pretty well. It's also got a very specific kind of sense of humor that is or isn't going to work for people. But I think as a whole, this is a really interesting series and a very interesting take on a paranormal or urban fantasy kind of series. So if you've read a lot of those and you're looking for something a little different, I do think these are different. I will give you also the warning that she has been supposed to have continued the series for like 5 years now or something crazy, and every year it says there's going to be a new book and it never comes. So you may also need to make your peace with like I think it's sort of a George R.R. Martin potential situation of like we may never actually get this finished.
You have 18 books before you get to
you have plenty of books, but like it does kind of leave a few key like we're waiting for a few key books to feel like the series is rounded off.
Wasn't she ill? Like, isn't that kind of what came up to? Wasn't she sick or anything?
I couldn't tell. I've heard that, but then I've heard other people say she's fine. So like, I don't know. I mean, you've got plenty of books, but just know that we may never get a fully satisfying conclusion to the macro plot happening. But the books themselves, I think, are really interesting. Even if I don't love every one, but I think they're doing interesting things.
Yeah. She has that setup where I love books like this, where she sets up a couple that you're like, there's no effing way. There is no
exactly.
way. And then you're like, in Kresley I trust, because then but you're just like, how?
How are they?
Happen?
Yeah. There's also a really good podcast that Sarah McLean does that went through every one of those books. And I think it's definitely worth listening to. So
Yeah.
It's a good series.
Yeah, so my last series I want to share, this is a super bonkers one, super smutty, right from the jump. This is my like dirtiest one that I'm sharing with y'all. And that is The Prophecy of the Sisters by Haley Feynman. So it is, I just posted this on my Instagram. It's Bride of the Traitor.
I've never seen it.
The third one comes out next month and it's called Bride of the Frontier. And the setup of this series is there's these 4 sisters who are part of a prophecy. Surprise, Prophecy of the Sisters. And they are prophesied that each one of them, so this is a time traveling romance as well, but only the time traveling happens in like the beginning and then we're in the past the whole time kind of setup, where these sisters are connected to their fated mates. And so they get pulled back in time to their fated mates. And each one of these sisters is fated to be with one of the greatest warriors of all time, of their like time. So this one is he's considered the traitor king because his father was a traitor, but she gets pulled back to him. This sister gets pulled back to basically like a Viking warlord in this one. And then the third one, I don't know where we're going with it. I'm very excited, but these ones are, there's lots of magic. There's dragons that exist in them. And so when they get pulled back in time, like in each time that they are, there's a seer or a prophet that they come across who will say, it's been prophesied that you're the sister of this time. And then they have to, convince their fated mate that like, this is what's going on and everything. I don't know. It's complicated to explain. It's complicated. Like a lot of fantasies are. But if you really like, if you liked kind of the like barbarian feel of this is a really interesting kind of stories. There's that real like, these are super toxic alpha males at the beginning of each book. So, yep, warning for that. But there's also just I'm a big fan of like when we get banging at the front, but then the intimacy grows. Because
I love that. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like Presley does that too in some of hers where like our sex stuff comes up front, but that doesn't mean the relationship's done. Like it's not complete just because we're having sex now. And I just really like that about these because they were sexy from the front, but there was a full story going on that doesn't just have to do with like they're finding their fated mate in chapter 1, but that doesn't mean we get along. Like that doesn't mean it's like working out. I feel like that's something that Cressley's books too is like a lot of times they know who their fated mate is, but they're like, no, like, I don't want it. And it's about how we get to it. So these ones
I'm going to throw you off a tower and break every bone in your body so that you can't come and,
or I'm going to till I can rip your soul out of your body. Like, it's going to work.
These very strong women.
So
that's I'm into that. I have found in the last couple of years, I do like a barbarian romance. I think that, I know it's not for everyone, but there is something very interesting about these like super like intense macho men who also like, love going downtown. I don't think that's historically accurate, but like that's
they have it all together. Like a lot of it in this one is like, oh, I found my mate. Cool. I'll have sex with her whenever I want to. That's great. She's mine. And then she's like, I am a modern woman from 2020.
Like, that's not how this works.
But yet he's from like year 500, so he doesn't know.
He's got to get educated.
Yeah.
Bree, did you have any leftover ones?
Maybe talking about time travel, there's Transcendence, which is a really unique one. So it's a cave and there's a little bit of time travel in it. And if you like the Ice Planet Barbarians where the communication issue is there, I saw a lot of parallels between those two because they can't communicate at all. So he can't speak English and he can't learn it. So they communicate in their own way, and it's very, very interesting and
so clever. What a clever story to tell. Oh,
is this one by?
Shay Savage, right?
Okay. Yeah. And he's, I think, a Neanderthal. Is that what we basically established? Yeah. It's a trippy one. I've never read something quite like it, but it's interesting.
Cuddle on the floor. It is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
Yeah. He's a cinnamon roll. He's a cinnamon roll Neanderthal.
I think when you get into fantasy romance, you get a lot of alpha heroes, but he's the one cinnamon roll in that.
Well, there are a lot of alphas, but I tend to like the ones where they're protective alphas and not alpha holes. So you do he does violently beat somebody with a
him for me
bone, but he doesn't. But you're getting his interiority. You're getting his interiority, so you know that he's not just like, that's my lady. It's like a different. Yeah. He's alpha when he needs to protect her, but he's not trying to control her.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's.
I hope someone would smash someone with a bone if they were trying to rape me.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, get him.
Like he wasn't just doing it for no reason.
Yeah. We're here for that.
Yeah.
Shauna, have we intrigued you or enticed you to any of these?
Yeah,
Bethany? Are you open to some smuttier fare?
Oh yeah, I like smut.
I've seen you read smutty things.
I read some too. I mean, I've read a few Ruby Dixon things, and they're fun because they're like campy about it. Yeah. It doesn't take itself that seriously. I think that's the thing. I don't really enjoy super smutty stuff that takes itself too seriously. I'm just like, okay, but really, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's fun. I get that.
I really like, and I don't know why I haven't read more romance, because when I read fantasy that has a great,
you like it.
I love it. I'm so here for it.
Shauna, can I request that you do a reading blog reading some of these recs?
Oh, yeah, sure.
To see a reading blog of that.
I love it. You should read one for every level.
Oh yeah, I should. I'll check it out. I'll have to do that. Yeah,
that would be fun.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. Some of my favorite books are because the romance of it all just was so epic and wonderful, and I'm like, it's so funny because in real life, I'm soulmates. I'm like, nah, no.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
That doesn't exist. It can't, statistically, that's not possible. But I love it in books.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the thing is too, is it can take a while to embrace the fact that you are a romance lover. It took me a while because there's kind of can be a stigma surrounding it,
Definitely.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people love romance and just wouldn't say it. If you love Sarah J Maas, you like fantasy romance.
Yeah,
that's what she writes.
There definitely is a stigma between if you're holding this book up and you're holding this book up.
Yeah. And I said that when I got this, I just liked these covers, but I think that the other covers are really cool too. But I was like, I know if I was holding that book up and talking to you guys about it, there are some people who would be like, oh, that's one of those books.
Yeah.
Just because of the cover.
Well, and I think what's interesting about it, right, is for instance, a lot of romance readers have not been picking this up because it doesn't look like a romance, even though it is. So I don't know, cover stuff is interesting.
Well, it's interesting even just to see the evolution of the Side Changeling series covers, because when they started, they read very they were very mass market man titty kind of thing. Yeah. And then it moved to this style of cover, and now it's moved to even a more sort of neutral cover, because they realized that romance readers would read it if they put different covers on it, because it's just a good sci-fi series.
I like the UK covers.
I think those too. Cool. Yeah, they're pretty. But I think the thing I would tell people who are maybe intrigued by reading speculative romance is that if you enjoy character-driven stories, reading ones with romances basically bakes that into the equation, because so much of the conflict has to be character-driven. So for me, that's a big part of why I gravitate towards romance in general, is that I tend to be a very character-driven reader, and that sort of guarantees
it cements it more. You're getting way more in depth with it for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's why contemporary romance can go so wrong for me too, is that when you're telling a contemporary romance, it's like 100% just about those two. So if there's a miscommunication when there's nothing in your way to keep you from talking to someone, there's no magic spells or wizards or people keeping you from doing something. It's just
like a blood oath. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes there's reasons why you can't say that. And so for me, then I can believe a miscommunication in a fantasy more than if I'm reading a college romance where I'm just like, you guys are just young and dumb.
Yeah.
Got time for it today. So I mean, I love contemporary too. I love it all.
Yeah.
When I'm getting annoyed with contemporary, I'll be like, okay, I need to read a fantasy or even a historical where I also believe there's communication in a historical better than I do in contemporary.
Yeah, same.
Or if you read the latest Ruby Dixon, she has her characters go to Ice Planet couples therapy when they realize they have communication issues, and it's amazing.
I love it.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Well, did anyone have any other leftover ones that they wanted to mention that they didn't get to mention?
I had one other YA one, but we only did like one round of those. I have the Black Witch Chronicles. The fourth one is getting announced soon. This one got so much flack because they did not. I mean, I'm just being honest. Like, they did not trust the author with where she was going, and I will be honest. Like, I was afraid to read it because I had been hearing, like, my friend buddy.
So good.
Yes,
it's so good.
And
it's so
like
good.
There's all this racism and speciesism and like sexism happening, but I was like,
that's the point. The point is that they're sexist, racist characters. It's addressing it. Like, it's not, the author is not racist. Oh my god. Yeah.
And so some of my friends, I think, just fell into, like, this was back when I was reading mostly YA fantasy on my channel, right? And I was reading it and being like, I think this is highly sophisticated. Okay, cool. So I just kept it to myself. And then I read the sequel, and it's like, why it is like the main character starts out as having had, like, she's been raised in a society that's racist, and she's at the top. Yep. So all she's ever seen is to be racist towards other people. And then when she goes to a new environment, all those different species that she's heard bad things about, they are mean to her because she's at the top. And so she's like, oh, wow, all these things I've been told, they're true. And it takes someone being willing to talk to her as a person before she starts to see that her whole society is really effed up. So it's a slow journey, and it was hard to sit through.
It's really good. Well, and there's like religious reasons to it. So it's basically as if you took like it's like the fantasy version of if you took like a racist, conservative, evangelical white person from the South and then put them in a very diverse school where they were heavily in the minority and everybody hated them because of their privilege, and they had to deal with it and slowly come to realize that they are wrong and the things they were taught were wrong and that these are actually people who have value. Like, it's great. It's a great book. But like, she got dragged so hard for people saying like, oh, this is racist. I'm like, yes, there are characters who say racist things because they are racist characters who are going on a journey to learn to not be racist. That's the point of the book. Anyway, it drove me crazy. I'm
glad I have a fellow thing, because then the second one it's the Black Witch, and then it is the what's the second one? I just totally forgot.
I don't remember. I haven't read the third one yet, but I read the first two.
Shadow Wine is the third one, and the Demon Tide comes out later this year. But anyway, this one has great romantic elements in it as well. It's a slow burn. There's supposed to be an arranged marriage maybe happening that we're fighting against, but lots of magic. This has heavy magic in it. There's witches and there's werewolves and there's Amazons and like there's everything. And this one race of people is trying to obliterate everyone else.
It's really good. Yeah.
So good. So anyway, I just wanted to mention.
And it's got lots of the like angst and like the love triangle sort of. It's good. It's good.
Dragons and it's amazing. So yeah, Lori Forrest.
Heather, did you? I think were you saying that you had another one that you wanted to mention?
Like a sharp turn.
Sorry, we skipped over. Like we only did one YA. So
if you love retellings, and if you watched Aladdin as a child, and you saw
don't do it
in the sand thingamabobber, the hourglass, and you're like, wow, this is weirdly this.
Oh my god.
Something for me, then I have
magical. What are you doing?
Katie Robert wrote the series. I'm just saying. And the
There's
first
no magic in it. What are you doing?
Jasmine and Jafar, it's BDSM. But it takes all of the heroines from the Disney movies are in love with the villains, and then the heroes from the Disney movies are the villain. And it's like gang, like Hades runs the underworld and it's a BDSM club, and that's like neutral territory and all the
Wow.
These aren't fantasy, everybody. She just wants to talk about BDSM on here.
gangs. You don't mind like banging being the plot. It's very good.
I've heard about these from.
I love these books. These are just not
I have to.
adult romance.
Yeah, I think I've seen all of you guys talk about these. They're on my TBR.
Very, very steep.
I think I got a free e-copy of the first one, so I'm like, maybe I will try it at some point. I don't think I'm gonna like it, but I might try it.
Might not be up your alley.
It might not be up my alley, but so many people talk about them. I'm like, maybe I'll try this at some point.
Robert does have a fantasy series, though, Heather. Did you know that?
Oh.
It's called The Queen of Swords. That's a fantasy romance series. The Queen of Swords.
By who?
Katie Roberts.
What?
What?
I have them. I haven't read them yet, but
Well, I mean, there's also Sacrifice by Katie Robert, which is vampires.
Yeah.
Or that's also MMMF with sword
Yep.
crossing.
multiple
Oh,
swords.
that is always the crucial question in the MMF is do the swords cross?
They always cross. This one doesn't.
Yeah.
She says it on her website. She's like, I write super queer gay stuff and the swords always cross.
I love it.
Anyway, there we go. Let's wrap that up.
Awesome.
That's not for children.
And on that note,
I'm going to plug Katie Roberts.
We were laughing about this in the other video too, of like, now which charity do we donate the money to? After talking about
Maybe rain.
something.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I
Redemption?
appreciate you guys joining us for some fantasy romance recommendations. I certainly added a lot to my TBR.
About like 12
we're
books.
waiting for that reading vlog. Just
I know I should.
Yes.
I will
Yeah.
do that. I'll do that. I'll pick a few from each like level, and some of them were already on my TBR. I just haven't gotten to them, so I'll have to do that.
I would love it.
That'll be fun. All right. Well, thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate you being here, and we will talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.